Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Thanksgivings, written by LgFatherAnthrocite. Srylik was looking through his oven door. The roasted perps and the greblich were nearly done. Friend Steve had invited Kralik to a human festivity called Thanksgiving. As Srylik understood, the celebration was one of remembrance, and Srylik was excited to meet with friend Steve's family. The timer on the stove dinged, and Srylik opened the oven and removed a heavy dish. He wafted the scent towards his olfactory plates and enjoyed the smell of home. He was thinking of what he should say during the thankfulness portion of the celebration. Friend Steve had explained that in his family, everyone said something they were thankful for the last year. He placed the dish on the stove to cool and went to prepare himself for the gathering.
Friend Steve, are there any other details I need to know about Thanksgiving?
Srylik asked as they rode to the gathering. Steve was driving to his family's home, and Srylik was asking questions about how to act. He smiled as he answered his neighbor's many questions. The earnest alien had spent several hours preparing a traditional dish from his home planet that he had heard had been well received by humans.
Just be yourself, buddy. My family's super excited to know that you're coming. Did you figure out what to say for the thankfulness bit?
He saw the alien start to respond, and cut him off, saying,
Save it for later. Don't ruin the surprise.
Very well, friend Steve. I thought of something, though, Srylik said.
Cool. Well, so what exactly is a perp?
Friend Tracy had expressed excitement at the dish Srylik presented to her when they arrived.
I've seen these on a couple cooking shows. I've been wanting to try them, she had told him.
Friend Amy had asked if he was the hero her older brother had told her about.
I'm not a hero, Srylik said.
Friend Chuck, who was a rather quiet man, had simply grunted at that and shook Srylik's hand firmly. Everyone greeted Srylik with a hug or a firm handshake. After introductions were concluded, drinks were passed around. Friend Tracy had made a special effort to make a cocktail for Srylik with diet soda, one of his favorite earth beverages. It was delightful. Soon there was time for dinner, and they all sat around the table, and food was placed along the whole thing. Srylik was sitting in the middle of one side of the long table, friend Steve on the other side, and his new friend Amy, Steve's sister, on the right. Across from them sat friends Bill and Janet, Steve's aunt and uncle, and either end of the table sat friends Chuck and Tracy, Steve's parents. Friend Tracy stood at the end of the table and raised a glass.
First, a toast to our new guest. We hope that you enjoy your time in our home and with our family.
Everyone cheered and raised their glass and took a drink. Srylik's eye stalks bobbed up and down cheerfully as he took a drink of his beverage. After everyone had sipped their beverages, Tracy said,
This year, I'm thankful my kids were both safe after that terrible earthquake over the summer.
I am thankful for being able to still be working after all the layoffs at work, said Bill.
I am thankful for being cared for by such a good man, said Janet, and kissed Bill on the cheek.
I'm thankful that I made it here to my family after that earthquake, said Steve.
I'm thankful for that as well, said Amy. I'm thankful that friend Steve has welcomed me both as a friend and as a neighbor, and finally to his family's home. Thank you, said Srylik.
Chuck stood at the head of the table, carving knife and fork in hand. He looked down at the turkey in front of him and said in a subdued voice,
I'm glad the person living next to my son is someone who would rush to check on him in an emergency and would spend 3 days helping in disaster recovery and still not think he was a hero.
Chuck nodded at Srylik and started to carve the turkey. Story number 2. Survival Mechanisms, written by Catfish21 SM.
That was hilarious. You mean you transformed right in front of it and it just ignored you?
The bird-like Tellurian asked. The Garanli, a 3-foot-tall quadruped that resembled something along the lines of a cross between a mushroom and a shrub, replied,
Yes, it was great. I mean, that's normal on our home world. It's how we avoid predators. But honestly, I wasn't sure how well it would work on a different world. It appears it thought that I was a plant or something. I'm not sure, but it looked aggravated. Just kicked the ground and snorted at a few times and left. I suppose it was a good thing that it wasn't a herbivore.
The 8-foot-tall bipedal bull-like Chromantus spoke up.
Yeah, I guess. How do your people fend off predators anyway? I don't see any camouflage mechanisms of you.
Oh, that's simple. We do this and scare them off.
The Chromantus replied, puffing out a thin organ from his neck. It inflated with air, growing quite large and forming a pattern that appeared to be 3 large eyes and sharp teeth. They were fake, of course, but a non-sapient predator may fall for the disguise. Even the sapient creatures around the table shivered slightly at that. All but the human, at least, who spoke up next.
Interesting. We have creatures back on Earth that do something similar. It is a species of snake, I think. There are some fish that do it too. Interesting. I've heard a lot about Earth, and honestly, I'm too afraid to go. I don't know how many of the rumors are true, but if even 1/10 of them are, then I'd prefer to stay away.
Probably a good idea, the Talarian responded. It's not a very nice place.
You've been? Asked the Garanley.
Yeah, just once. It's not as wild as they make it out to be. The humans have tamed most of it, but even so, it's not very nice to aliens.
Good to know. Speaking of which, what is your defense against predators? I hear that the predators on your homeworld are quite fierce.
Yes, they are. We evolved flight to avoid them. It is a very useful skill. We can't perfectly mimic a planet like your species does. But honestly, I think I prefer our method.
I agree, flight would be better, but that doesn't work on high-grav worlds, right?
No, it doesn't.
If the atmosphere is thick enough, unfortunately, it does take a lot more energy on them. We can't maintain flight very long on those. I suppose that's where your camouflage would come in more handy.
Yes.
It works as long as there is something plant-like in the area for us to mimic. Speaking of which, Gorg, you've been silent this whole time. What's your species' defense mechanism? The creature, that appeared to be a mix between a reptile and a centipede, spoke up next.
Yes. Our species spits a corrosive acid from our gullet. It is an effective deterrent.
That is interesting. What about you, Jongik? The thing resembling a mix between a gopher, a porcupine, and an ant replied.
Your species evolved as sort of semi-hive mind. We are able to communicate simple thoughts as almost telepathically. When one of us encounters a predator, we are usually able to notify all the others within a certain radius. We lose one, but the hive survives.
Interesting. John, what about you? Earth is a dangerous place. Surely humans must have some defense mechanisms, right?
Probably several, the Chromantus nodded. Ours isn't that interesting.
Come now, share with the group. Everyone else is bearing their defenses into the open. You should do so as well.
With a slight blush, John replied, Well, we just killed them, I guess.
The small group stared at him, eyes open, via the stiff filtration organs primed. You what?
Well, humans have a tendency, and aren't called apex predators for nothing after all. Many predators in our evolutionary past that seriously competed or threatened us were kind of hunted to extinction, to the point that those that remain have either been tamed or turned into pets, or has evolved an instinctual fear of us.
The group was silent at that remark, the leafy appendages of the granary turning a shade of dark red to match the color of the leaves of the salad on the plate in front of them. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.